I think of Santa Clara as a microcosm of the problems that exist nationwide, and I worry that Santa Clara is not doing a very good job of addressing those. Um, so, while I recognize that there's no place or community or organization that's free of racism, um, at Santa Clara, we're an institution based in Jesuit values and community and social justice. I think there's an obligation to do a better job of addressing issues like racism. Um, and my personal perspective on this comes out of a lot of the stress research that I think about all the time. And one of the things that really matters for the mental health of college students, or anybody, but college students at Santa Clara, is acculturation stress. So feeling like you don't belong in the community, and or feeling like you are the other. And I think that on this campus is tied to race and ethnicity and experiences of racism.
Racism is a form of oppression in which one racial group dominates over others. So in the United States, we see this problem as multifaceted. We have a history of racial oppression, and even today, it continues to be a problem because of the disconnect between the way white Americans and black Americans view a lot of the racial issues we have today. So in a Pew Research survey regarding race relations in the United States, we see that black Americans tend to have a more pessimistic view of the future of race relations and the current state of race relations within our country. So when asked the question, it's not at all likely that black people will eventually have equal rights. 50% of the black respondents agreed with the statement, whereas only 7% of whites did. Additionally, when asked the question that the legacy of slavery affects the position of black people in American society today a great deal, 84% of the black respondents agreed with the statement, whereas only 58% of white Americans did. This pessimistic outlook even applies to the institutions that we have within American society. Whether it's dealing with the police, the criminal justice system, hiring, pay and promotions, or any other interaction with government organizations or private corporate or public corporations, we see that black Americans disproportionately feel unfairly treated compared to white Americans, and white Americans do not agree with them. These differences can be attributed to America's long history with racism. Since its inception as the 13 colonies, the United States has been founded on the idea of equality and freedom, which were novel ideas at the time. However, there was also simultaneously slavery going on within a lot of the states, and it became the underlying economic model for early America. And so what we saw was the use of quote-unquote science to help explain this unequal treatment between blacks and whites, and the long history of differences between color established a requirement for unequal treatment, or continued requirement for unequal treatment, that explained a lot of the occurrences that we saw of racism, whether it was slavery, the treatment of Native Americans and their placement onto reservations, the Japanese internment camps, or any other events that punctuated American history. So essentially, racism and its history in America created the foundation for a lot of the experiences we see today. And it just created the institutional racism that we experience today.
My mother called and said, she'll fly out. She'll be with us as we drive across the country, and she'll help us manage the children. So she came out. Her and Alice put a lot of food together for the trip. That morning, we left about 5 a.m. Great trip, having a great time. good conversation. Somewhere around 6:30, 7 o'clock, we got a little bit tired and said, why don't we get a motel so that we can rest and then have an early start in the morning? So we were looking at a number of the motels as we drove down the road, and we saw one. It was a great big bright flashing line that says vacancies, vacancies, vacancies. So we stopped in. They were in the parking lot. I went inside. When I walked inside, the lady was just finishing up one contract with some folks. Some other people were coming in behind me. And so I walked up to the counter, and she said, how can I help you? I said, I would like to get a motel for the evening for my family. She said, you know, I'm really sorry. I just rented the last one. We will not have any more until the morning. She said, but if you go down the road about hour, 45 minutes, there's another trailer park down there. I said, yeah, but you still have the vacancies light on it. It's flashing. She said, oh, I forgot. And she reached over and turned the light off. Then she looked at me and I looked at her. There were other people in the room. She kind of looked at them. No one said anything. So I just got the hint and I left, went outside to the parking lot. And I told my mother and I told my wife and also Melanie, I said, well, it looks like we're going to have to drive a little bit further down the road to be able to sleep tonight. And we did drive down the road, but just before we took off and pulled out of the parking lot, guess what happened? The light came back on and it said vacancy, vacancy, vacancy. Sitting in my TV room watching TV, and they were talking about Ferguson and all the hullabaloo that was going on. And all of a sudden, one of the news commentators got on the air and she said, in the last 3 months, 8 unarmed African American males have been killed by police, white homeowners, or white citizens. And for some reason at that moment, it just all hit me. I said, what is it? It is so insane. What is the hatred that's causing people to do these kinds of things? Just then, one of my grandsons called. He said, Granddad, did you hear what they said on TV? I said, yes, I did. He said, I'm just so confused. He said, we do everything we do. But it seems that driving while black, walking while black, talking while black, it's just dangerous. What can we do? We do everything that you told us to do. When stopped by the police, we place both hands on the steering wheel at the 12 o'clock position. If asked to get identification, we tell them, I am slowly reaching over into the glove compartment to get my ID. When pulled out of the car to be searched, when laid on the ground to be searched, when our trunks are open to be searched, we don't push back, we don't challenge, because we know you've told us, don't you challenge the police. After it's over, call us and we'll be the ones who challenge. He said, and this is the piece that really bugs me. He said, our white friends, our buddies, we kind of hang together. When they hear about these kinds of things happening to us, they say, why do you take it? You need to push back. You need to challenge. You need to ask them for their identification. You need to get their numbers so they will know that there's those things that can happen to you, repercussions, as a result of the kind of things that are happening, the kind of things that are going on. And here's what the boys have been taught to tell them. We know that you can do that, but please do not do that while we're in the car. Because the consequences for you is significantly different than the consequences for us.
Is California any different than the nationwide experience with racism? And the short answer is no, it's not. For example, even though we rejected slavery in the 1850s, the state government offered $5 for Native American heads. We declared a war of extermination on Native Americans, which reduced the population of these Native Americans from 300,000 in 1769 to 17,000 in the 1900s. Later on, we discriminated against Asians. We barred them from owning property. Chinese migration into California was illegal, and there was discrimination of Asian Americans through rental and sale of housing, which was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of the United States. Even today, California has the most hate groups by absolute number out of the 50 states. 12% of reported hate crimes took place on the college campuses within California, and several of these instances involved racism and swastikas. Now that we've seen racism as it applies to the nation and state levels, let's take a look at how this has impacted people's perception of Santa Clara University.
While I appreciate Santa Clara is really trying to promote diversity, I feel concerns that it will remain stagnant and that it won't become more diverse, because I know the population is about half white now. So I think my biggest concern is that it just stays that way, because it's not, in my opinion, while demographics are increasingly diverse, I don't think they are fully there yet. So I just hope that Santa Clara continues to pursue that.
In the context of Santa Clara University, my concerns are just the general feeling of safety and welcomeness at Santa Clara, especially because for me specifically, my little sister's coming next year, and just what kind of environment she's coming into and whether or not that'll impact her education, because I do think that there is a climate around SU that's not always welcoming depending on race. I feel like our campus is pretty polarized between groups, and I feel like it's a definite reflection of how it is nationwide in some form. I think that the people that are the climate setters, basically, or that put forth what is appropriate and not appropriate regarding race in this country, has changed, and that has been reflected nationwide as well as on our campus. I think people are getting more daring on a national level. I haven't noticed that necessarily at Santa Clara. I've kind of felt that hasn't changed too much, but it'll be interesting to see how that changes.
So you mentioned that you're concerned for safety and lack of diversity because your sister's coming here. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. There have been a couple of situations that I've heard of where of black students at Santa Clara University getting harassed by campus safety or the local police that are just completely inappropriate, in my opinion, just because of the color of their skin. And as a big sister, that's concerning. Will my little sister be harassed by a professor or campus safety because of the color of her skin? And as well as everyone that here is someone else's family member, everyone should feel safe and welcomed on our campus, to walk around at night and things like that without feeling like they might be harassed.
The next question is, how do we solve these issues that are facing not only students but faculty members at Santa Clara University? Following are my 3 solutions. The first step would be to increase the communication between groups of people, whether that be different races, ethnicities, or backgrounds, or positions in the school. So I want to create group-based discussions every year to specifically address the issues of race and racism involving all faculty, staff, and students, and any other member of the Santa Clara community that wants to attend. So the direct action would be to recruit faculty to engage in these discussions to help moderate and facilitate and ensure that the conversation is respectful and that it's productive. And I want to promote student engagement through pass-fail gradings and unit credits to show the students that there is a reward for attending and engaging in these discussions, and that will help incentivize more participation within the discussion. So a major drawback would be the diversion of faculty from other classes and research, or staff from essential functions within the university. However, I think it's worth it because we are directly engaging the entire community on very real problems that affect the idea of belonging within the Santa Clara community. And also it adds more, another drawback is that this group discussion with grading increases the stress for the students because you're increasing the amount of units. So that's something to consider as well. But as I mentioned earlier, I think the costs are worth the benefits. The second solution would be to decrease the financial barriers to attending the university for minority students. So by increasing the availability of non-merit-based scholarships to minority students should increase the diversity and minority recruitment to the university, and therefore decrease racism experienced at the university. So this would require the diversion of funding from athletic and academic-based scholarships to scholarships for minority students, which could potentially harm athletic and academic program statistics and prevent high achievers from attending Santa Clara University. However, this is important because, as Dr. Saxon mentioned, the acculturation stress experienced by students that feel underrepresented not only on the nationwide level, but especially on the small local community-based level, is from the experience of feeling like the other. And by increasing minority recruitment and increasing the numbers of non-white students at Santa Clara University, we should be able to address this problem and decrease racism within the country, within the university. The third solution is to increase the diversity of faculty mentors available throughout the university. So the option would be to oppose only hiring faculty from prestigious universities to increase diversity of the faculty. As Dr. Saxon mentioned in the interview, the university tends to focus purely on the prestige of the university from which the potential hiree graduated from, which tends to favor white faculty members over minority faculty members. So by creating a community-based hiring group involving a diverse group of not only faculty members but also students and community members to be directly involved in the hiring process, you have the ability to better represent the entire Santa Clara community through a faculty member. So the key drawbacks would be student involvement may be biased more towards easier professors. So when you involve students in the hiring process, they may look for the more charismatic one as opposed to the most qualified one. But I think that would be balanced out by the involvement of faculty members relevant to the field of study that the new hiree would come from. And also drawing faculty and students from different subjects, kind of brushing on the competency again, may not adequately assess the competency of the potential faculty member.